The Nexary vessel hung in Earth's orbit like a crystalline snowflake, its translucent surfaces refracting starlight into prismatic patterns. Inside, first observer Venn stood motionless before the observation window, their silver eyes fixed on the blue planet below. After 10,000 years of existence, very little could stir genuine curiosity in a Nexary, yet something about this world tugged at Venn's consciousness. Primitive, yet fascinating, Venn transmitted the thought to second observer Kira, who materialized beside them in a shimmer of light. They live such brief lives. 80 solar cycles at most. Can you imagine? Kira's form rippled with what might have been amusement. The Nexary had long ago abandoned physical bodies, their consciousness housed in crystalline matrices that could project any form they wished. They scatter their genetic material like pollen, reproduce rapidly, and expire just as quickly. Hardly an efficient system. Yet they've achieved spaceflight, Venn noted, projecting a feed of a recent human launch. Their vessels are crude, burning chemical fuel like ancient fire. But they've reached their moon, sent probes to their outer planets, all within a single century. Desperation breeds innovation, Kira responded. When one has merely decades to leave a mark on existence, one must rush forward recklessly. We've seen it before in other mortal species. But Venn wasn't so quick to dismiss them. In their role as first observer, they had studied thousands of emerging civilizations. Something about humanity was different. Look at their art, their music, their stories. They create with such intensity, such raw emotion. Because they lack the time for refinement, Kira countered. Given immortality, they would learn patience, achieve true perfection as we have. Venn projected a series of human images into the space between them. A mother cradling her newborn, soldiers rushing into battle, lovers embracing, mourners at a funeral, explorers planting flags on mountain peaks. Are you certain? Look at how fully they live each moment. When was the last time any of us felt such urgency? Kira's form flickered with discomfort. It was an unsettling question. The Nexary had achieved biological immortality 5 million years ago, their consciousness transferred into immortal matrices, their civilization reaching heights undreamed of by mortal races. They had transcended death itself. Yet lately, a creeping sense of stagnation had begun to permeate their society. The Council would not approve of this line of thinking, Kira warned. We achieved perfection. What could we possibly learn from creatures who still fear death? Perhaps that's exactly what we need to learn about, Venn replied softly. Fear, hope, love, pain. When was the last time any of us truly felt anything? Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. Both observers turned their attention to the incoming data stream. A massive solar flare was building on the sun's surface, far larger than anything in Earth's recorded history. When it hit, it would devastate the planet's technology, possibly setting human civilization back centuries. They have no warning systems advanced enough to detect it, Kira noted. Their satellites will be destroyed, power grids collapsed, communications severed. Many will die in the chaos that follows. We could warn them, Venn suggested. Our sensors detected it weeks ago. There's still time for them to prepare to protect their most critical systems. That would violate every protocol we have about interfering with developing civilizations. Kira's form pulsed with alarm. The Council would never approve. Let nature take its course. If they survive, they survive. If not, a ripple of indifference passed through their crystalline form. Venn continued to watch the planet below, noting the billions of lives going about their brief existence, unaware of the devastation approaching. Humans died all the time. It was their nature. What was the loss of a few million more compared to the importance of maintaining protocol? Yet something deeper troubled the first observer. The Nexary had achieved immortality, yes, but at what cost? They no longer created art that stirred the soul, composed music that moved the heart, wrote stories that inspired action. They no longer took risks or made sacrifices. They had gained eternal life, but lost the very things that made life worth living. "I'm going to help them," Ven announced suddenly. "You cannot. The Council. The Council has forgotten what it means to truly live," Ven interrupted. "These humans, for all their primitive nature, remember something we've lost, and I intend to learn from them." As Kira watched in shock, Ven's crystalline form began to shift and change, taking on solid matter for the first time in millennia. They were making themselves mortal. "You'll die," Kira transmitted in horror. Ven smiled with their newly formed lips, feeling the strange sensation of a heart beating in their chest. "Perhaps, but first, I'm going to live." The solar flare was coming. Humanity would face its greatest challenge yet, and one immortal being had chosen to stand with them, ready to rediscover what it meant to be truly alive. The descent into Earth's atmosphere burned. Ven had forgotten what physical pain felt like, the searing sensation as their newly formed body plummeted through layers of gas and pressure. Their makeshift vessel, hastily constructed from their own crystalline matrix, glowed white-hot against the night sky. In the 5 minutes since their transformation, they had already experienced more raw sensation than in the previous 1,000 years. Fear, excitement, uncertainty. The cocktail of emotions was overwhelming. They landed outside a small research facility in Norway, chosen for its advanced particle physics program and isolation. As Ven emerged from their vessel, they felt the bitter cold against their skin. Another novel sensation. Their human form, carefully crafted from studying thousands of specimens, drew curious stares from the facility's staff who had witnessed the landing. "I come with a warning," Ven announced, their newly formed vocal cords struggling with human speech, "and an offer of help." Dr. Sarah Chen, the facility's lead researcher, stepped forward. Her dark eyes studied Ven with a mixture of wonder and suspicion. "You're not human." "No. I am. Was. Nexeri. An immortal race. But there's no time to explain. A solar flare is coming, one that will devastate your civilization unless you prepare." The humans exchanged glances. Their primitive instruments had detected nothing unusual about the sun's activity, yet something about Ven's urgency compelled them to listen. Back in orbit, Kira watched through the ship's sensors as Ven broke dozens of Nexeri laws by sharing advanced scientific knowledge with the humans. The second observer should have reported this transgression immediately. Instead, they found themselves fascinated by their former colleagues' actions. Over the next 72 hours, Ven worked alongside the human scientists, helping them modify their power grids and communication systems to withstand the coming storm. They marveled at how quickly the humans adapted, how they worked tirelessly despite their need for sleep, how they poured coffee down their throats to stay awake, driven by the urgency of their mission. "Why did you choose to help us?" Dr. Chen asked during a rare quiet moment. "Why give up immortality?" Ven paused from their calculations, considering. "Because my people have forgotten how to live. We exist forever, but we no longer grow. You humans, you burn so bright, precisely because your time is limited. Every moment matters to you." "That sounds lonely," Sarah replied softly. "Living forever without really living." Before Ven could respond, their instruments detected the solar flare beginning its final approach. They had hours, at most. The Nexeri Council, alerted to Ven's actions, dispatched enforcers to retrieve their wayward observer. But as the crystalline ships entered Earth's atmosphere, something unprecedented occurred. Humans around the world, warned through a hastily established network, began implementing Ven's protective measures. Not all would survive. The coverage wasn't complete enough, the time too short. But instead of panic, humanity showed remarkable coordination and sacrifice. Ven watched in awe as people volunteered to manually maintain critical systems during the flare, knowing they would likely die from radiation exposure. Parents worked to protect schools and hospitals instead of rushing home to their families. Strangers helped strangers prepare, share resources, establish backup communications. The flare hit with devastating force. Much of Earth's technology went dark. But the core infrastructure, protected by Ven's modifications, held. Instead of centuries of setback, humanity would face months of rebuilding. And in orbit, Kira made a decision that would shake the Nexari to their core. As the Council ships prepared to forcibly retrieve Ven, the second observer transmitted a massive data package to the Nexari homeworld. Every moment of humanity's response to the crisis. "Look," Kira's transmission commanded. "Look at what we've forgotten. Look at what it means to truly live." Ven, now irrevocably mortal, felt their heart pound as they helped coordinate recovery efforts. They had perhaps 50 years left to live, if they were fortunate. And for the first time in their immensely long existence, every single moment felt precious. The Nexari Council received Kira's transmission with shock. Ancient beings who had not felt uncertainty in millennia began to question. And on Earth, humanity began to rebuild, their brief, bright lives burning with purpose that the Immortals had long forgotten. Humanity's recovery exceeded all expectations. Within months, they had not only restored their infrastructure but improved upon it using principles learned from Ven's intervention. But a greater challenge loomed, one that would test both species' definitions of existence itself. The Nexari Council's ships hung in Earth's orbit like shards of frozen light. Their ultimatum was simple: Ven must return and face judgment, or the Council would forcibly retrieve them, regardless of human casualties. What they didn't expect was humanity's response. "We won't let you take them," Dr. Chen announced over the hastily established quantum communication link. Behind her stood representatives from every major nation on Earth. "Ven chose to become one of us. They have human rights now." The Council's response came as a wave of crystalline ships descending through the atmosphere. They had not faced defiance in millions of years. Their technology was virtually godlike compared to Earth's capabilities. Victory should have been assured, but they had forgotten something crucial about mortality. Those with everything to lose fight the hardest. Humanity launched a counterattack that shocked the Immortals. Using principles learned from Ven, they had modified their weapons to target the crystalline matrices that housed Nexari consciousness. Each lost ship meant true death for beings who had never faced that possibility. The Council hesitated. For the first time in eons, they felt fear. Kira, watching from their ship, made another unprecedented choice. They'd broadcast the battle to every Nexari in existence. "Look at what we've become." Their transmission rang across the collective consciousness. "We who sought to perfect existence now threaten those who truly understand its value." The conflict reached its crescendo over the skies of Norway. Human pilots, knowing they faced certain death, flew suicide missions against Nexari vessels. Their brief lives burned bright in acts of sacrifice that the Immortals could barely comprehend. Ven stood in the research facility's courtyard, their mortal heart pounding. They had experienced more raw emotion in these few months than in all their previous millennia. "Stop this," they called to their former people. "Look at what your fear of change has wrought." The Council's attack faltered as more Nexari began to question their actions. The humans' willingness to die for their principles, their fierce defense of a former immortal who chose mortality. It forced the Nexari to confront uncomfortable truths about their own existence. In the end, it wasn't superior technology that decided the battle. It was the power of choice. Across the Nexari fleet, individuals began to question their blind adherence to stagnant protocols. Some even followed Ven's example, choosing mortality over eternal emptiness. The Council retreated, but the damage to their certainty was irreparable. They had faced something they never expected: the possibility that their perfect existence was deeply flawed. In the aftermath, Ven stood with their human defenders, feeling the weight of years ahead, years that would now have meaning precisely because they were numbered. "Thank you," they said to Dr. Chen, experiencing the novel sensation of tears, "for teaching me how to live again." The Battle of Norway, as humans would call it, marked the beginning of a profound change in both species. The Nexari could no longer ignore the power of mortality to give life meaning, and humanity, despite their technological inferiority, had proven that the length of existence matters far less than how one chooses to live it. The ripples of the Norway incident spread across both civilizations. On Earth, humanity began incorporating Nexari principles into their technology, while maintaining their distinctly mortal perspective. Among the Nexari, a movement grew. Those who questioned whether immortality had become a prison rather than a gift. Kira, once a steadfast defender of Nexari tradition, found themselves leading this revolution. They had established a secret communication channel with Ben, who was now experiencing their first year as immortal. Each conversation revealed new insights about the nature of existence. "Today I felt pain," Ven transmitted. "I burned my hand cooking." Such a simple thing, yet it taught me more about caution and consequences than millennia of observation. They paused, considering, and then Sarah showed me how to treat it. The comfort of another's care, we never needed that as immortals. The Council, struggling to maintain control, faced unprecedented challenges. Young Nexari, inspired by humanity's vibrant existence, began experimenting with temporary mortality. They would transfer their consciousness into biological forms for brief periods, wanting to experience what their immortality had denied them. But the true transformation came from an unexpected source. Dr. Chen and her team, working with willing Nexari volunteers, discovered something extraordinary. The process of transferring between mortal and immortal states had created a new form of existence, one that combined the best aspects of both species. "It's not about choosing between eternal life and mortality," Dr. Chen explained to a joint assembly of humans and Nexari. "It's about understanding that growth requires risks, that meaning comes from choices that have real consequences." The new hybrid consciousness they developed allowed Nexari to experience mortality in cycles, periods of vulnerable physical existence alternating with their immortal state. Each transition preserved the memories and growth from their mortal phase, gradually transforming the entire species. Some Nexari chose to remain purely immortal, viewing the experiments with horror. Others, like Ven, committed fully to mortality. But most embraced this new middle path, understanding that true evolution required both the wisdom of immortality and the intensity of mortal experience. Humans, in turn, gained access to technology that could extend their lives, not to immortality, but to several centuries instead of mere decades. Yet most chose to maintain their natural lifespans, understanding that their brief, bright existence was not a weakness but a source of their greatest strengths. Ven, now visibly aging, found peace in their decision. They had fallen in love with Sarah Chen, experiencing the bittersweet beauty of a relationship both would know must end. "In all my immortal years," they told her, "I never understood why beings would choose to bond knowing loss was inevitable. Now I know, it's the impermanence that makes it precious." The Nexari civilization, once frozen in eternal stasis, began to evolve again. Their art, dormant for millennia, exploded with new forms inspired by mortal experiences. Their scientific pursuits, once focused solely on preservation, expanded to explore the full spectrum of existence. Humanity had given them an invaluable gift, the understanding that true perfection lies not in avoiding death, but in embracing the full scope of life, with all its joys and sorrows, its triumphs and failures, its beginnings and endings. A century had passed since the Norway incident. Ven, in their final days, lay in a hospital bed surrounded by both human and Nexari observers. Their journey from immortal being to embracing mortality had transformed two civilizations. Dr. Sarah Chen had passed decades earlier, but their love had inspired generations of human Nexari partnerships. Their daughter, Marina, now led the hybrid integration program, helping Nexari transition between states of existence. "Do you regret it?" Marina asked her parent, holding their weathered hand. "Choosing to die." Ven smiled, their silver eyes now clouded with age. "How can I regret truly living? Each moment, joy, pain, love, loss, has been more real than all my immortal years combined." The Nexari Council had evolved into a new form of governance, one that recognized the value of both eternal and finite existence. Their civilization now pulsed with a vitality it had lost millennia ago. The hybrid consciousness program had spread across their empire, creating a society that understood both the weight of time and the freedom of eternity. Kira, who had remained in their immortal form but experienced mortality in cycles, materialized beside Ven's bed. "You changed everything, old friend. We thought we had achieved perfection through immortality. Instead, we had trapped ourselves in endless stasis." Humanity, too, had been transformed. While maintaining their relatively brief lifespans, they had gained understanding of existence that stretched beyond their years. Their art, music, and literature now reached depths that touched both mortal and immortal hearts.